warm welcome to Forbes India Presents Ultimate 120 in association with Oppo. The COVID-19 pandemic has transformed the way we live, work, and play. It has also changed us as consumers. In an age where social distancing has become the norm, our tastes, our preferences, our choices as consumers in the long term are bound to change. How are brands reacting to this transformed consumer behavior? How are they using digital technologies to engage better with customers and create memorable and very, very enriching customer experiences? And finally, what is the new normal going to look like as we as consumers step out with transformed choices? Those are some of the questions that we are trying to answer here today. And I'm very pleased to introduce three very innovative entrepreneurs on the show today. I'd like to welcome Gautam Pasupuleti, CEO and MD of Biodesign Innovation Labs, Prashant Warrior, co-founder of Cure.ai, and Jay Krishnan T, founder of Asimov Robotics. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here today. All of your innovations, in a sense, have been used to tackle some part of the pandemic that we are currently in. So kudos to all of you for stepping up and really, delivering on market needs at this point in time. Gautam, let me begin with you. One of your key focus areas is to reduce the mortality rate due to respiratory diseases. During COVID-19, of course, your assisted respiratory devices, your affordable ventilators have been recognized as a great innovation to tackle the outbreak. What sort of increased demand have you seen throughout the pandemic, and how much of this demand do you see, remaining post the pandemic as well?
So we have been working on this product Respirate and ResPap for the past 3 years, and we have primarily identified there was a shortage of ventilators in India across hospitals and government hospitals, which is leading to mortality and morbidity. Patients with respiratory illnesses having emergencies or any kind of respiratory complications due to cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest. And we've developed this device called Respirate, which is basically assistive respiratory assist solution, which can provide positive pressure ventilation. And right now, during the pandemic, we've realized that in the month of February and March, we have received a lot of inquiries for our orders, for manufacturing Respirate and ResPap. And we have developed the solution much more compliant with the COVID specifications. And we have also come up with non-invasive ventilation solution, which is ResPap for children. Now we have also developed that for adults. So we have received a lot of traffic from government channels as well as NGOs and CSRs, and we have received orders from different organizations. And there's a huge demand, and right now we are trying to meet the specifications of the government, which is going to be enrolled from the ICMR. Yeah.
Right. All right. And Prashant, you've been deploying AI-powered solutions for COVID-19 management. Give us a sense of how you've been able to harness artificial intelligence to really empower frontline healthcare workers in particular, because they're really the ones at the battlefront right now.
So we have been, Cure has been building AI solutions in radiology for the last 4 years. And we have built out solutions which can interpret X-rays, CT scans, and other imaging modalities. And specifically, one of our solutions is interpretation of chest X-rays, which can detect all kinds of abnormalities on a chest X-ray. And when we got to know about COVID, we said, COVID is a lung abnormality. So can we identify abnormalities related to COVID on a chest X-ray? So we looked at research and we identified opacities, consolidation. These are the kinds of things that show up on a patient's lung. And we built that technology. So we built that technology sometime in mid-March, which could basically take these abnormalities and identify whether a patient has COVID or not. Now, we cannot diagnose COVID from a chest X-ray. What it does is, a lot of times, patients who are tested, people who are tested for COVID are asymptomatic people, right? And you want to test the people especially because number of tests are limited. You want to test people who are more likely to have COVID, who have abnormalities in their lung. So that's where we said that, okay, can we triage people who need to be tested by seeing, basically looking at multiple things, right? One is symptoms. Second is looking at whether they have any kind of lung abnormalities. And third is looking at oxygen saturation levels. Quickly wanted to talk about another solution that we developed for COVID. So we had a lot of experience building natural language algorithms. And what we did for COVID is we realized that people are going to be quarantined and isolated at home. And you need to triage them to figure out who needs to come into the hospital to be tested. And one of the things that we built is a WhatsApp-based chatbot solution. So it will chat with you. It will chat with you at home, right? And it will send you a message saying that you were in touch with so-and-so who's now positive for COVID, and it will identify what kind of symptoms you have. It will ask you for symptoms multiple times a day and see whether the symptoms are getting worse.
How accurate is this at this point in time?
This is not an X-ray, so this is basically just collecting information, right? This is a chatbot solution. So this chatbot solution is, 100% accurate. It's looking for data. It's collecting data from you, and it's collecting that information back.
Right, all right. So let me also bring in Jay Krishnan at this point. Jay Krishnan, really, this pandemic has somewhat given us a glimpse of what the future of medicine and medical care could look like. You launched a robot in Kerala government hospitals that dispenses food and medicines to COVID-19 patients. It collects their trash. It enables video calling between the doctor and the patient. Tell us how this experiment has been, how successful has it been, and what are the big challenges that you're seeing in the whole man-machine engagement?
We started working with this solution long back, 1.5 years back, when the second outbreak of Nipah was there in Kerala. So at that time, we were actually working with a solution inside the ICU for a little bit of therapeutic application also, because we actually wanted to protect healthcare workers getting affected as well as avoid cross-infection between patients through the health workers. So, but when this COVID outbreak came, the first thing we did is we had 2 robots ready in our office. So we are actually incubated in an ecosystem where 40 companies are working. So we deployed these 2 robots at the entrance in the lobby to meet with visitors who are stepping inside and then dispense mask, tissue paper, sanitizer. So I'll just explain the working of this robot in a very brief way. Like there will be a nursing station with every COVID ward. That is the home position of the robot. So there are 2 trays in the robot, and one is for taking the food inside, and other one is for taking the trash back from the ward. So you have to load the actual caregiver, the human caregiver in the nursing station has to load the tray with food, drinks, and other items like if they want to have mask or other things, whatever is there, they have to load that first tray. And there are actually multiple rooms. That is how the COVID ward is organized. In this medical college, there are 10 different rooms, and there is a corridor. So there is a UI with which this caregiver can sequence the number of destinations, and then just press a single button, the robot goes inside autonomously. When we sat with the medical team, we understood that they periodically clean the robot. So what we did is we weatherproof the robot to be able to clean it periodically without any issues. So that is one thing. And secondly, we also understood that the robot has to do other things when the trash is taken back, it is highly contagious. So we have a UV disinfection box which disinfects the trash on the way back to the nursing station.
Well, health, hygiene, and safety have really become some of the most important issues for consumers because of this pandemic. I want to talk a little bit now about how these are going to drive innovations in the future for you. Gautam, a lot of the demand that you're currently seeing is, of course, because of the pandemic. In the long term, are there certain consumer behaviors, certain trends that you're observing that are really here to stay? And how do these trends then impact your future innovation as well as expansion plans?
I can only say in the perspective of as a medical device company, we are looking at as a emergency care and some transport ventilation sort of a market, and there is always emergency care needed. So in that case, be it pandemic or not, there is always need for emergency care. There is always need for a transport ventilation. There is always need for enough ventilators in the hospitals. So I think this pandemic more pushes the aspect of being prepared and making preventive actions so that if there is any outbreak in the future, so the hospitals and the healthcare system, both in the private sector and the public sector, are more prepared for handling any kind of a situation. And that's where our focus in trying to make these available in larger volumes at affordable price, so that the hospitals in the government side, be it in the primary health center, secondary health center, tertiary health center, are enough equipped with these machines and solutions.
Right. An interesting point you made there, that preventive healthcare is perhaps going to gain much more prominence post the pandemic, and that's a big lesson for the entire healthcare fraternity, of course. Prashant, have there been unique consumer trends, patterns for you at the B2B level that you've been observing? and tell us a little bit about the changing role that technology is going to play in the whole healthcare system of the future, specifically in diagnostics.
See, I think, I mean, a lot of people are starting to use telemedicine now. You want healthcare at home, right? I mean, with COVID and at least for the next maybe 9 months, 1 year, you'll see a lot of healthcare at home delivery. And potentially that is a trend that will last for a long time. But not a lot of radiology testing. So you typically cannot get an X-ray home. I mean, there is not many providers there, but also that's going to happen where you have X-rays come home and take an X-ray at home, right? And you will see a lot more, I mean, a lot more healthcare delivered. What's also happening is that the portable X-rays, which are actually on within the ICUs, within the wards, and specifically for COVID wards, they have seen a huge rise in demand. And as you have these portable X-rays, as you have these X-rays at home, right, AI will actually have a big role because you have to interpret these X-rays. Not that we are going to replace a radiologist, but the reality is that when you have such a high volume of testing and testing done at locations where they may not have physician access, radiology access, you need to have some kind of a technology support to read them.
Right. All right. On that note, let's head into a short break right now, but the conversation continues on the other side. And after this short break, we are going to talk a little bit about creating enriching and memorable customer experiences. Stay with us. Forbes India Presents Ultimate 120 in association with Oppo. On the show today, we are trying to decode the Indian consumer, especially as customer preferences and tastes have really been transformed by the pandemic that we're in. Gautam, let me come to you. I want to talk a little bit right now about how enterprises are creating memorable customer experiences. Access and affordability are, of course, core goals that any healthcare startup like yours is chasing. How are you enhancing customer experiences along the way while chasing these end goals?
First thing you need to keep in mind is make sure that you deliver the quality. The quality is the highest priority. So you make sure that you underpromise and you over deliver. Customer retention is one aspect, and customer acquisition is the other aspect. So customer retention, we need to retain the customers and we need to retain the partners. So the whole thing is, it is related to the product that it all comes down to the aspect of quality. So if you make sure that the quality of the product is meeting the patient's requirement, meeting the end user's requirement, the doctor's requirement, and you are basically making sure that the customer is coming back to you, the doctors are going to recommend the healthcare service providers, the hospital authorities to make a reorder. Because it's a COVID, we are looking at every day something new, things are coming up, and some new research is being published, and some new finding says that this is working, this is not working, and you can rely on those things, and you'll have to keep optimizing your solution.
Right. And coming to you, Prashant, how are you harnessing emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and data analytics to really create memorable and very enriching customer experiences? And in the end, is the investment really worth it? Because customer experience is pretty subjective, isn't it?
A couple of things. I mean, Gautam spoke about quality, right? That's critical. I mean, having great quality products. I mean, because finally you are dealing with somebody's life, dealing with somebody's health, and you have to have great quality products that you're bringing to market. Second thing is that with healthcare, you have a heavy regulatory burden, right? So you have to clear the regulatory. You have to have validations. You have to have testing to clear that regulatory burden. You have to get a CE certification for certain markets. You have to get FDA approval for the US. And you have got other regulatory bodies across the world, right? So that's the second one. But I mean, your question is the most critical, right? That I mean, all of these allow your product to play. It's basically brings you onto the playing field, right? But to play in this field and to win, you have to have a great customer experience. We want to make this experience for our customers, which are B2B customers, very seamless. So they don't have to go open a new tab on a browser window to see the cure results, or they don't have to open up an application on their laptop to see these results, right? This is seamlessly integrated. We use WhatsApp. We send a message on WhatsApp, or we send a message on Telegram. We have integrations linked to their software system. So if they use a certain radiology viewing software system where the X-rays come to a system, we'll automatically put the results on top of that. So you see the X-ray, but you also see the cure marking there. So you can see that, okay, the cure has said that this part of the X-ray is abnormal, and the percentage of lung affected is 30%. And these are the abnormalities that are there on the X-ray.
All right. And Jay Krishnan, coming to you, when you design and innovate for the future, what is the kind of consumer that you are envisioning? And can automation really help you create very hyper-personalized, hyper-localized customer experiences?
Yes, definitely. Actually, as Prashant was telling, one thing we can see is that the technology or the complexity or the sophistication is sitting inside the solution is to make things simple at the front end. When I talk about robotics, particularly when there is a physical entity, unlike the software solution, and it is actually going to interact with a completely unstructured dynamic environment, it is basically highly challenging, first thing. Second, because it is an emerging technology, during the introductory phase, it is going to be very costly. So these are basically the challenges that we have to address. So that's what we are trying to do, basically. Like, that is a most important thing in terms of hardware startups or the hardware solutions like robotics. And the second thing is, like, we have to, as you rightly said, we have to personalize the customer experience. One thing is the physical interaction and the audiovisual interaction, and also the value addition which it can give in long run by personalization.
Gautam, there are also large-scale disparities between public and private healthcare enterprises in India. In a post-pandemic world, what should innovators and healthcare providers really be focusing on so as to really democratize delivery of healthcare services across, across the board for a person of any economic strata?
This is a very good question in terms of how we can be more prepared for post-pandemic COVID-19. And as innovators, you should always look for what is needed in the last mile. So I think innovators need to cultivate the process of looking at developing a solutions for a very niche problems which are already there, and the problems which are plaguing the society, which is the burden of diseases like pneumonia, burden of diseases like respiratory illnesses, and there is a huge gaps and the burden of gaps that you're looking. If you look at hospitals and you visit some 10 hospitals as an innovator, you would understand what hospitals have certain equipments and what are the other hospitals doesn't have equipment. So innovators first have to reach out to the last mile doctors, and they should understand what are the real problems in the problem that they are solving.
All right. And Jaykrishnan, as we are envisioning this new normal or this post-pandemic world, what do you think companies or startups can do to create far more enriching customer experiences, digital customer experiences, because really digital is the future as we look forward, right?
Apart from robotics, which companies can do is, one is like, I think in terms of augmented reality and virtual reality, these are the two technologies that can give you, experiences very close to reality.
Prashant, do you want to add on to what Jaykrishnan was just saying? How to create these perfectly seamless digital experiences for the consumer of the future?
Healthcare experience as we move forward, and that came about because of the pandemic, but in reality that is an experience, that is a complete experience changer overall, right?
As we wrap up, I'm going to give each one of you about 15-20 seconds each to just give me that one big shift in customer behavior that you think businesses should be prepared for in a post-COVID-19 world. Just that one big tectonic shift that you see coming your way from a consumer behavior perspective. Gautam?
So one thing is that we need to focus on what are the customers' immediate requirement. Like if there is if the demand keeps changing based on the market needs, right? So the industry has to adapt to that, and they need to make changes such that they can keep pivoting their solutions and can meet this growing demands.
So be ready to pivot very quickly. A lot of agility required for sure. Prashant, one big tectonic shift in customer behavior that you think enterprises should be prepared for?
I think enterprises should be prepared for customers doing stuff on their phones or on the internet, right? And so you have to be very much online, very much digital focus. And I know that focus has been there, but I think it just need to accelerate a lot more for every company out there.
All right, Jaykrishnan, what about you? One big tectonic shift in customer behavior that you think startups and even large organizations should be prepared for?
I think, as Prashant was mentioning, it is going to be a fully connected world. And I don't completely think that this sort of pandemic issues will go off very fast. We have to, that's typically, I see it as a problem in adopting the new normal, like, it's a legacy problem. But basically it will be like the entire interaction with the customers and the customer experience and taking the feedback, everything is going to change. In terms of robotics also, more rooms will be clean, more lawns will be moved, and a completely new customer experience will emerge. And I think the digital experience will also emerge as a plug-in service in all market verticals.
Right. Right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing those very, very valuable and interesting insights into the future. That's a wrap of this special conversation and decoding the Indian consumer. How much of the change that we are seeing right now is permanent is something that we will, of course, have to wait and watch and find out. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, goodbye.